This is the
Stuck at
home service.
Come on, Martin. It's time to record the podcast. What's up?
Oh, I don't know, I'm just not feeling it to say. I don't think I can be bothered with the podcast this week.
Ah, nonsense. You know what will really cheer you up?
What?
A certain little song that everyone loves.
What are you talking about?
It's our new national anthem by Kate Thomas and Friends.
I could do without it today, really.
Oh, go on. You'll like it once you've heard it.
And go on then, play it if you must.
Yeah.
We do not know what lies ahead, but our times they're coming. And if we believe all that's been said, it's a kind of unraveling. The ground beneath our feet is shaking, and with each day's news our hearts are aching. So put your hand in mine, my friend. We'll face what comes together. We'll face what comes together. So let us stand as we face the coming storm, for we love this land. Let's work for a better dawn, and let us love like we've never loved before. Sisters and brothers all together, let us stand.
So didn't that cheer you up?
No, not really.
But why not? It's the national anthem. Surely that should add pep to your step and joy to your life.
I'm just not really feeling it today. I'm feeling a bit down.
I just don't understand, man. It's the show. It's the brightest light in all of our lives.
Yeah, and I find that a bit sad. Okay, what's next?
Well, Martin, this next interview is the real bee's knees. Because it's an interview with beekeepers.
What do the bees think of the Trump's removing the funding from the WHO?
What do the bees think of it? Fortunately,
Yeah.
the bees are oblivious to it all. I think. Keeping busy getting the pollen in and making the honey and busying around the hive. So fortunately, they are completely oblivious to everything. The virus, Trump, whatever. What about your bees, Chris?
Well, I wish I could say the same thing. Mine. I've been doing this more than 10 years now, and they've always done all right. And I've just gone out and looked like you do this time of the year. You check, you go out and see how they're doing, and you open them up and have a little look because you've got a monitor. And I've got my 3 colonies have got this disease called nosema.
Oh, no.
You'll be familiar, yeah.
Basically, Martin, that's a bit like human diarrhea, almost.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. If you're
Not very pleasant, yeah.
Yeah. So I looked, and if you first see it, you think, oh God, you get little streaks of diarrhea. It's not very pleasant, but they streak diarrhea all over the front of the hive entrance, and when you look inside, they've shat themselves inside the hive as well, which they wouldn't normally do.
They don't do that. That's a good
No. They fly out and defecate. So anyway, so they do that, and they trample around in this diarrhea inside the hive, and then that diarrhea's got these. Yeah, that's right. And what it is, there's a little sort of it's a parasite. It's a microsporidial parasite that gets inside the bee's guts, and it lives in the cells in the lining of the bee's guts, and then its life cycle sort of goes through its little process, and then all these the spores break out from these pathogens and invade the gut of the bee, and it gives it diarrhea, and and the problem is they don't develop properly because the bees can't digest their food properly, and so they can't then feed their young properly, and then there's some changes in behaviour which makes them not clean up the hive as much as they would otherwise do, and so it just
worse.
puts the colony back. Yeah, so instead of having, but this time of the year, I should have at least 7 or 8 frames of my brood chamber, all covered with bees and brood and all, everything going wonderfully and numbers soaring. But instead, I've just got 2 or 3 frames in each hive covered with brood. So it's really annoying. So I blame Trump because I think.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't surprise me. Well, I've had fairly successful. Come out of the winter fairly successfully. Like you say, for those people listening that don't know, that in the winter the bees don't hibernate. They kind of stay in the hive in this sort of V shape, but they do come out for the cleansing, what they call the cleansing flights. So it's obviously yours didn't bother to come out and have the cleansing flight.
I think because it was a bad weather. We had that sort of wet, damp spells, and they were confined quite a lot, weren't they?
Yes, they were. Yeah. But you can't, and that's a shame because there's so many diseases with bees that everything's out to get them really. So I feel quite lucky. I've got 3 hives. One of them was a swarm from last year.
Okay.
So like there's a swarm of bees, and my friend went to collect the swarm, and she didn't want it, so she gave it to me. So that's one of my hives, and they're doing quite well. And then I bought a set of bees from a bloke called Ivan. Who's Wakefield Way, is quite a well-known beekeeper, and they're the most passive bees you could ever. You could go in without your suit on and your gloves on.
Is he the bee inspector?
He's not. He used to be. He was the bee inspector.
Okay.
He was the bee inspector. So there are bee inspectors all around the country, Martin, because and they make sure that. They're very experienced beekeepers, and they make sure that everything's run properly. And we're supposed to register with the bee inspectors and kind of make sure that we're adhering to all the rules and regulations. And that's particularly necessary when there are diseases around, like there was last summer, European foul brood was around, and once that gets a hold of your hive, you have to destroy your hive. You have to inform the inspector. It's a bit like foot and mouth that you have to inform. So anyway, I bought a set of bees from him, and they're such a lovely, calm set of bees. And then my other hive is one left over from last year, and the queen is probably just on her last laying year, so I need to dispatch her. And so I'm looking for another queen, but I won't be looking to you for another queen because I don't want diarrhea in my
No. Well,
Chris.
I'll need to try and requeen as well later. I think I'll be okay. So I've done all the research, and it's okay. Well, you leave them. You might not get much of a honey crop, but they kind of sort themselves out very much after a while. So I hope I do that. I hope that. Have you got much Varroa?
I haven't got any Varroa. Varroa's no, I haven't got any Varroa. Varroa is, for those listening, is a little mite that lashes itself to the wings of the bees and attacks.
Attaches the body of the bee.
Yes, it does. To the body of the bees, and you have to treat. And if you've got a lot of Varroa, you have to treat it with. Well, a lot of people treat it with oxalic acid. I've never been a fan, to be honest. I find it a bit suddenly Varroa strips, but this last couple of years I've not had any Varroa at all.
That's really
we have been a bit lucky. I don't know. Where do you keep your bees?
I keep in the garden. It's quite a big garden, so there's no problem. But and I've not had any. I've not had a massive problem with. I've definitely had Varroa mites. Yeah. I think everybody has.
Yeah, they do. Okay. Yeah.
And I used to use the Apigard, the little chemical. But I was reading this stuff about the vaporizing oxalic acid, which is so I've been doing that the past 5 years. We share a little vaporizer, 5 of it, and it works really well. It works really well. Good. And so the one hive that I couldn't, because the entrance was a bit wrong, I couldn't do the vaporization on. That one has this year and last year it got a bit of deformed wing virus on the bees.
Horrid, yeah.
I mean, it's like I've got all these diseases.
You've got bees on.
Conversations about bee diseases, but anyway, a little bit of that I've noticed this year. So it's all a bit annoying for me this year.
Oh, that's a bit.
How much honey do you get? How much honey do you get off your bees as a rule?
As a rule, bearing in mind there are 10 frames in each super, and you can by and large you can get usually about 2.5 jars of honey off each frame.
Yeah.
That's a bit, but sometimes, most of the time. So for 10 frames, you can get about 25 jars. So this year, I'm hoping that if I can get sort of 2 or 3 supers, I should get about 50, 75 jars off each hive.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, we have to leave
Yeah.
the super for. Now, last year, I to clean a hive out to make my big hive, to make it kind of ready for this year, I shook swarmed it. So, which means basically, I'm talking to you. You know this, Chris, but listen as well.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Basically, you put in all new frames. You put your hive to one side, you get your new hive, your all clean, nice new hive, your nice clean new frames, and then you shake all the bees off the old frames and they go into the new hive. So it's like having a spring clean for bees. And then you feed them because they need some energy to kind of build up the hive again, up the comb. However, because you do that, and they use all the honey they had to build up the hive. I didn't get very much at all, probably not even a frame off.
Right.
But usually I could get, the year before I had about 100 jars of honey, 12-ounce jars.
Right. Yeah, as a rule, I would get between 20 and 30 kilos of each of my hives.
Yes, that's about right.
So,
yeah.
That works out, times that by 3, and you've got like 90, 60 to 90 jars of honey off of. Which is great, isn't it? I think that's sort of partly to do with being in the city, because city bees, contrary to perhaps what people might think, city bees do really well. Kind of forage throughout the year. There's gardens all around, and most of them have got a few flowers at all times of the year. Crocuses in late January and all sorts of stuff that hangs on. So they do okay on warm days. They can get out, and then cities also are a little bit warmer. And they're not like the sort of countryside, which is often a very sterile place for bees, in that there's all just one crop like oilseed rape, which is great for 3 or 4 weeks, and then there's nothing.
And then
all the hedgerows are gone.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
the other flowers aren't there. So they do. Bees do pretty well in Sheffield.
They do very.
You remember the club, Beekeepers Club, Linda?
Yes, I am Sheffield Beekeepers.
Sheffield Beekeepers. Oh, me too.
Yeah. I've not been to the last 2 or 3 meetings.
Then, but...
But my bees are at the allotment. I've got 2 hives on my allotment at Grimesthorpe, and one at the vicar's garden. We've got a vicar around here called Hugh. And he's got a very large.
He's a rector.
Oh, beg your pardon, he's a rector. I never know the difference.
Oh, yes.
I'm not very well up on these things, Martin. But he's
a sub.
He's a naturalist rector
with my bees in his garden, and we only put them there for the winter. Yes, indeed. So I put the hive there, and I said, "Can I house them in your garden?" And he said, "Yes, that's fantastic." And I said, "I'll move them in January, February time, because it's obviously the bees are quieter to move them then." Yeah. And he said, "Fine, that's great. So it got to February, and I texted and I said, Hugh, can I? We're going to come and collect the bees and take them." And it went very quiet. He went very quiet, and I thought, I wonder what's happening here. And then he texted me back and he said, "Well, we've been thinking. Do you mind if we keep them in the garden?" Well, of course, it was great, because it's another place to have bees that's different to the allotment. Yeah. And he's got quite attached to them. And he did say to me that he said, "I really like them. There's one in particular called Jeff." He said. And I said, "Well, I hate to disappoint you." Yeah, a bee. I said, "I hate to." Yeah, they're all females. I said, but if far be it from me. But anyway, so I've got a hive there, and they're doing really well. And there is a very big difference between, as you say, the bees' honey that you get in the allotments and gardens around Sheffield, and the honey that you get out on the hills. And I once had my hives out at Warncliffe Side, and they had a lot of heather honey. Which was it's a bit stronger. Yeah. It's very nice honey, but completely different to the kind that you get here in the city. And
that's right. I've got mine in Sharrow, Nether Edge Sharrow. Yes. Most of my honey comes in a 3-week period between the end of June and beginning of July. Very slightly, and that's from all of those lime trees that are either side of Salter Lane and Kenwood and all that. As you go out on the sort of the posh bit of Sheffield, they've all got these there's still some trees left. A lot was chopped down. There's quite a lot. Anyway, and that's that 3-week period. That's when I'll get almost all of that very light, not citrus lime, but very light lime honey. It's delicious flavour.
Oh, but that's lovely. Yeah.
If I take some honey off, if I look earlier in the year, like say in another month, so we're sort of in the middle of May, end of May, there'll be quite a lot of honey in there, but it'll be really different. It'll be from all the spring flowers, all the pear blossom that's out now, and all the cherry blossom. They collect all that, and that's a really totally
Very
different flavour honey.
Totally.
So
and you can tell. Yeah, it is, and you can tell just by looking at it. It's a lot lighter.
Yeah,
I actually prefer spring honey to the summer honey, but it's all different.
Right, yeah.
So people normally people can't tell the difference. It's just honey, and it's not. But you can tell the difference. I can tell the difference.
Totally can, especially when you've got one next to each other. If you taste one from another, it's astonishing how different they are if they're sat next to each other and you've got an opportunity to try them both. But yeah.
There is another type of honey that I've not really got into, but it's not another type of honey, but it's a different way of doing it. But Ivor, the bee inspector we spoke about earlier,
Ivor Flatman, isn't it?
Yeah, Ivor Flatman. That's right. Yes, thank you. Yeah. A lovely man. He creams he's got a creamer, and he creams his honey, so it looks like lemon curd when whiter. When you get it, it's absolutely delicious. Great. It really is lovely. Yeah. So I might invest in a creamer next year. I don't know. We'll see. I do quite like the runny honey.
Well, mine stays runny until about October.
Yes.
And then it kind of starts to like, I think all honeys do that, don't they? They start to granulate, they crystallise and
sets.
It sets. So mine does that. So yeah. God. How's this doing, Martin? This chat has gone 14 minutes.
You still there, Martin?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I was just waiting to get a word of edgeways.
We're going to lose the listeners, mate, in a minute.
I think we successfully got a chat there.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there are so many beekeepers all over really, but in Sheffield, you can ask. I'm on the Swarm collection WhatsApp. And you can put a question on there to somebody, and for 10 different people, you get 10 different answers how to do it. And I'm not asked really, but it is. Yeah, it's everybody does it differently. Everybody works differently.
Yeah.
And there are people like yourself that have been doing it 10 years. I've only been doing it 4 or 5 years now.
Right.
And some people, that are brand new and really crack on with it. It's a lovely hobby actually. Sorry, Martin. Yeah.
So what does beekeeping bring to you? What does it give you, apart from honey?
Apart from honey, and stings.
Go on.
Yeah, no, go, Chris, go.
No, now my children have grown up and left home. It's all I've got left. They're kind of. It's just nice to have these little living creatures in the garden that I suppose, slaves in essence. But it's just nice to be able to manage something that natural and end up with, a whole lot of honey at the end of it. I get a lot of pleasure strolling down with a cup of coffee and just watching them fly in and out. And learning about what they do and how they behave and manipulating them. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't because they don't always read the books. But mostly it works, and that's quite rewarding, I think.
It is. And I mean, I know it's this time of year you have to be really on your toes because it's the time when they start to swarm, or you have to make sure the queen's laying, there's no diseases or diarrhea or whatever it is. So it is quite a busy time from now right through to really August, September. But it is quite a relaxing hobby as well. I know we're constantly getting stung, but not constantly, but occasionally. But it is a relaxing hobby, and it is lovely to sit. And I have sat and watched I've watched them bring in pollen and been absolutely amazed at some of the colours. And I thought, what the hell's that colour? Where's that from? But they do mixed flowers. Bees go from flower to flower. So by the time they bring the pollen in, it could be a mixture of all sorts of different flowers. And that's a lovely thing. And they're also, they pollinate my virgin fruit on the allotment has been absolutely amazing. So the pollinating is great, and it's good for the environment. There's lots of reasons, and I do. It has its frustrations. It has its frustrations, certainly.
This is the
Stuck at
home service.
Well, that was our interview with Chris and Linda about bees.
That was about half of it, actually. They're really good on like a house on fire.
They do love bees.
There were a lot to say about bees, yes.
You know what Linda's got even more of? Music that she submitted to the show.
Yeah, that was nice of her, actually. She put out a call for people to put things in the show, and She sent me a song, recorded herself.
Well, it sounds great, and we're going to go to that now.
Okay, Martin, here's a little song for you then. I've only learnt this last couple of days, so. Inch by inch, row by row, I'm gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low, gonna make it fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down. Pulling weeds and picking stones, we are made of dreams and bones. Need a place to call my own, 'cause the time is close at hand. Grain for grain, sun and rain, find my way in nature's chain, till my body and my brain tell the music of the land. Inch by inch, row by row, I'm gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low, gonna make it fertile land. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe below till the rain comes tumbling down. Plant your rows straight and long, season with our prayer and song. Mother Earth will make you strong if you give her loving care. Slug by slug, weed by weed, boy, this garden's got me teeth. All the insects come to feed on my tomato plant. Inch by inch, row by row, I'm gonna make this garden grow. Gonna mulch it deep and low, gonna make it fertile land. Inch by inch, row by row, please bless these seeds I sow. Please keep them safe and warm till the rain comes tumbling down.
Well, that was Linda's song. You were right, it wasn't about bees.
It's quite cheerful. It's about the garden and...
Yeah, see,
like
that's not cheered you up a bit?
That's nice in the garden, isn't it?
It is nice in the garden, it's a lovely sunny day.
Yeah.
Speaking of lovely sunny days, you know what everyone's favourite segment is that we do on this show?
No.
It's the weather!
Okay. Well, I'll start off. I was sitting with my back to the window. I can see light streaming in. So it's an insufferably sunny day.
It is a lovely sunny day out there, Martin, isn't it? Interspersed with weird intervals of grey cloud that don't put a damper on my day.
But it's really cold. It's really cold, really.
Well, you are sat in the shade.
I am, yeah. What's next?
Well, Martin, up next is another of one of our favourite segments. Chris Bellamy's Sherlock Holmes radio plays.
Oh, I quite like these.
Yeah, this one's called Sweet FA, which is someone who used to work in the sports industry, and still should be. Really hits the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, that's sort of amusing.
Sherlock Holmes and Sweet F.A. Written and read by Christopher Bellamy. Sherlock Holmes was filling in his football coupon when his friend Dr. Watson came round. As usual, Watson was flapping. On this occasion, he was flapping the menu from the Football Association's annual bun fight, which he had just attended. "Starter was Scarborough Fair," he began. "Tasty, though somewhat lacking in seasoning." "You should have asked for extra time," said Holmes. "What was the main course?" "Pheasant sliced along the middle." "Game of two halves," said Holmes. "And for dessert?" "Sweet F.A.," Watson replied. "In fact, the most notable thing about the dinner was that the courses were announced by a cock that the F.A. employs for the purpose." "A professional fowl," said Holmes. "Not my game, though, football. Cricket man myself. Always carry a corky with me. Never know when it might come in handy." Just then there was a knock at the door. "That will be Lestrade." "How did you deduce that?" asked Watson. "Well," said Holmes, "it was partly the unmistakable aroma of partially baked apple crumble drifting up the stairs, and partly it was the sound of conspiratorial laughter coming from the street below. But mainly it's the distinctive knock of a man who has spent years with a Metropolitan Police notebook in one hand and his pencil in the other." Sure enough, when he opened the door, it was to reveal Lestrade. A nearby housing estate had been named after him, and he was exploring every avenue. However, he'd received disquieting news. "The England football team, Mr. Holmes. They've been kidnapped, and whoever did it wants a ransom of £1,000 for each of them." £1,000? Watson exclaimed. "For someone with nothing better to do than kick around an inflated pig's bladder? Why, that's more than most people earn in a year." "But think of the ramifications if it is not paid," said Holmes. Watson thought of the ramifications and paled. "You're right. They are due to play Germany this coming Saturday before Her Majesty and the Kaiser. Cancelling the game at this late stage would have dire consequences." "Precisely," Holmes agreed. "It could lead to resignations, questions in the House, even an inquiry." "What sort of inquiry?" "Parliamentary, my dear Watson." Then Holmes asked Lestrade how the ransom was to be paid. "At the back of the Met," he began, "there are 6 houses, and each of them has a backyard. It's known locally as the 6-yard area. In each yard there's 2 bins, making 12 in all. One of the bins is marked rubbish, and the other 11 are marked outstanding. The ransom's to be left in the one marked rubbish." "And where will the England players be?" asked Holmes. "In the ones marked outstanding," replied Lestrade. "What atrocious marking," said Watson. Holmes disagreed, saying, "Who would think to look for an England football player in something marked outstanding? Tonight, gentlemen, we hit the back of the Met." That night, Holmes deposited the ransom in the bin marked rubbish, while Watson and Lestrade freed the England players from their unaccustomed positions marked outstanding, after which they all went for a drink and jellied eels at the Helmet and Truncheon. "This lot must have cost a pretty penny," said Watson, tucking into his 3rd helping. "Complimentary, my dear Watson." But as Holmes lay his head on the pillow that night, he had an uncomfortable feeling that came not from a surfeit of jellied eels, but from a suspicion that the night's events were only the beginning of something decidedly more serious. When Saturday came, the stadium was packed with spectators, and the Queen and the Kaiser sat in the royal box. It soon became apparent that the referee was something of a martinet, taking his whistle from his overly capacious shorts and blowing it for the slightest infringement of the rules. "The man's a megalomaniac," Watson exclaimed. "The way he's behaving, you'd think football was a matter of life and death." But Holmes was beginning to suspect that it was more important than that. The game ended in a draw, a satisfactory result for international relations, after which the business of presenting the teams and officials to the Queen and the Kaiser began. First the England team, then the German team, next to the referee's assistants, and finally the referee himself climbed the steps to the royal box. But as the referee neared the Queen and the Kaiser, he reached deep into his overly capacious shorts and produced something that made the crowd gasp in horror. He had his Webley in his hand, and he meant to use it. But before he could squeeze the trigger, the pistol was dashed from his grasp, not by a blow from a quick-thinking bodyguard, but by the cricket ball that Holmes kept in his pocket for just such emergencies. It was the final whistle for Professor Moriarty, for it was he who had been the referee and who had demanded the ransom for the England footballers to fund his evil plans. Later, in the hospitality suite, The Kaiser asked Holmes what made him suspect that the referee was in fact Professor Moriarty. "Well," said Holmes, "it was partly the unusually large number of crows nesting on the cop, and partly the recent hike in the price of Guatemalan rubber. But mainly it was this book that I found in the away changing room," and he held aloft a copy of Professor Moriarty's Guide to the Rules of Football and World Domination.
See, Martin? Wasn't that another great radio play by Chris Bellamy?
I'm finding him a little formulaic, but maybe that's his gig. Maybe that's what he does.
Well, Martin, it would be a real shame if two people were to sit down and make practically the same show every week on end.
Yeah, okay, fair point.
But you know what's really gonna spice things up?
What?
More music!
I'm going to do a song called Like Smoke. And it's quite an old song, really. It's probably about 2 years old. There's no recordings of it available yet, but there will be at some point. This is it. And you're like smoke. Here 1 second, then you disappear. And I can still breathe you in the air. Trying to work out if you're really even there. And I'm like smoke. I hang around in your atmosphere. Next to you like a passenger. You have to chase after, but we can rearrange in a matter of moments. And there's no real certainty over where we're going. Depends which way the wind is flowing. 'Cause we're just floating in space. Here's the ocean. And we're like smoke. And we're like smoke. Here 1 second, then we disappear. And we breathe in the air. Trying to work out if we're still here. And we're like smoke. Just hanging around in the atmosphere. Next to each other like passengers. Trying to work out what's worth chasing after. And we can rearrange in a matter of moments. And there's no real certainty over where we're going. Depends which way the wind is flowing. We're just floating in space. Here's the ocean. We're like smoke. We're like smoke. kind of waiting for a nod from someone to tell me if I need to play another one or if I can save it for later. Okay. Well, this next one's also about 2 years old. It's called Just Do. And it goes like this. I hear there's no such thing as the real world. And if you're in one, you should get out. Take a long walk around. See, you get a feel for it now. And I can see it in your eyes, you hear the sound. So lost, but so happy and found. Find a hill, climb to the top, and look out. Look out, look out, oh look out. Look out, oh look out, look out. And just do what you want to do. Not what you've been told is true. And remember that I love you just for being you. And just do what you want to do. Out of touch, nothing rhymes. Get enough just to go and hide. Out of luck or some other lies, and giving up it feels like it might be alright. 'Cause we could just pretend. We could just pretend. We could just pretend, and it's like an hour. The feeling will come along, you know, the one that makes time bend. And just do what you wanna do. Not what you've been told is true. Remember that I love you just for being you, and just do what you wanna do.
Well, that was my very own cousin and your very own nephew, Felix.
Yeah, Felix is a talented lad. He played those tunes for me a few years ago now, during TEDx talks, and I just thought I'd dig them out again because it's been a while since we heard them, and once again I was very impressed, I would say.
This is the
Stuck At
home service.
It's a conversation between Alex and Felicity, her mother, and Felicity is a laugh, I will say, and Alex is pretty good fun as well. So
I love that kind of intergenerational banter.
yeah, well they get on well, and being around them, you can't help but feel a bit better yourself. It's just puts a smile on my face.
Sounds to me like you're cheering up.
I am a little, yeah.
It's a bit like living in the 1950s again, Alex, where there were very few cars, it was very quiet, you were very domestically based, and I've got a garden, so I'm very lucky, and it's a gardening time of year,
and it's been good weather mostly. So that's been great. I've not been bored. And I've got a dog. Without the dog, it would be pretty grim living on your own. But he's been wonderful because he doesn't know what's going on. So he's just the same furry boy. And I've been going out for exercise and shopping. What I've not enjoyed so much is turning the corner at Tesco's and seeing the queue for the first time. I thought, oh my God. And I thought, I'm not bothering with that. And I went to Aldi. But now there are queues at every supermarket, unless you get up at the crack and go to Old People's Bright Hour, which I haven't managed yet. So the queues, and you have to queue at the local shops as well, which isn't so difficult. That's been the downside. Things take longer, but there's less to do. And it's absolutely lovely that you don't have to think, oh, I've got to get ready. I've got to go out. You've got to have your eye on the clock. I haven't got my eye on the clock. It's a struggle to know what day it is. I live in a block of flats and I wake up and I'm alive and then my neighbours come popping out. So that's great. That's great too, to see everybody every day. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely great to have people around and neighbours in this time, definitely.
Yes, it is. It is.
Makes a big difference.
It does. It does.
Both myself and my sister Ellie and her family, we've all settled in Sheffield. It feels like where our roots are. You visited Sheffield in the 50s and 60s as your grandfather, your mum's mum lived here.
Yes.
What was Sheffield like then?
Cold. But the biggest difference, I was walking with Ellie along a street in Crooks, past some stone-built cottages, and they were all cream-coloured. And when we used to come in the 50s, all the houses were blackened with soot. They were black with soot. The stone cottages were black. So that was a big contrast to Nottingham because there wasn't the heavy industry in Nottingham. That was different. And it was surrounded by hills. It was very, very hilly in comparison to Nottingham, which is only slightly hilly. I mean, Sheffield majors in hills, doesn't it? And when we used to visit my grandfather, we used to come because he was widowed. My grandmother met me, but I have no recollection of her at all. So we used to go and visit him on Foxhill Road in Wadsley Bridge, which is a real big steep hill. And we used to go for Christmas sometimes as well. And my mother was always short-tempered. And I realise now that I'm older why she was short-tempered, because she had to pack the bird, the suitcase, all the presents, the surprise. My father didn't finish work till 6 o'clock. And there weren't that many cars on the road. There was no M1. So we used to have the big decision, should we go on the Mansfield Ramper or not? To this day, I don't know what the Mansfield Ramper is, Alex, but it was inclined to be foggy on the Ramper. So it was a big decision. And of course, being a child, we had no part in that decision. And we set off. It was a huge, huge thing to do. And then when we came over in the summer, sometimes we'd stop at Bakewell. We'd come the pretty way, of course. So that was Bakewell. Or we used to stop at Baslow. And we went into a cafe, could you believe it? And we had a Coke float. Well, I mean, that was a treat, a Coke float. Yeah, that was the major event, really. Yeah, it was amazing.
What would you say to your younger self? What would have been helpful and kind?
I'd say to me, hang on in there. It will get better. It will get better. Because there's a feeling, when you're a teenager, that yesterday wasn't quick enough. You want everything now. And of course, things don't happen like that, especially when your mother won't let you out very much and you haven't got much spending money. So I'd say hang on in there. Yeah. It will get better.
And what do you feel you've learned about life as you've got older in these last few years?
I've been very grateful that I was brought up with skills. I mean, my mother wouldn't let me out to play till I'd done some embroidery. Well, I used to sit there and think this is medieval, which it probably was. But I learnt how to sew and to knit, not to cook, because there was nothing to pass on. But I've been really grateful for those skills. So then I've developed hobbies, because I think your hobbies are really important. They sustain you when things are tough. You know, they're something you can turn to. And I've always enjoyed reading and the theatre and gardening. So the importance of interests, as they say, or used to say on application forms, what are your interests? What else have I learned? As I've got older, the importance of forgiveness. Very easy to say, very hard to do, very important. And we had a very disciplined childhood. I mean, it was tough. It was tough. But the importance of self-discipline, I think you won't get far without that. And I gave up smoking. Well, I used to smoke when you were a kid and you were asthmatic, Alex. How could I do it? But I did give up smoking, and it was very, very hard, but I did it. So the importance of self-discipline as well. Currently, unfashionable discipline. It's been unfashionable for some years.
The mother-daughter relationship can be a tricky one.
Oh, yes.
How have you coped with that?
I was a girl once. And I think of something something I read. Kindness is the greatest wisdom.
I think for me, probably appreciate the similarities. And appreciate that their experiences were very different to mine. And appreciate the experiences that I've had. And I think probably appreciate what you got from them. So both my mum and my grandma are really, really funny, and take most things in their stride. Well, take pretty much everything in their stride. Have a very funny turn of phrase, and I think that's a great gift to have been given.
I'm very proud of both of my daughters, and that's saying something, because I mean, having been brought up by a Yorkshire woman, they never ever told you that they loved you, ever. But then you had starched sheets, starched clothes, meals on time, so they did it in what they did. They never said it, but they did it. It was in the doing. Yeah, and I was thinking, I was talking to Eleanor this morning about the coronavirus, and I thought afterwards, a phrase of my mother's, a sentence, it never rains, but it pours.
For some people more than others. I mean, for us, for me at the moment, I can stay at home. I've got an amazing garden, but, for people, if they're having to self-isolate because of serious health problems, then, for some people, it's just, it adds an isolation to...
Well, let's not forget you're a nurse.
Yeah.
And Felicity, did you worry about her at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not a worrier by nature, but I'm aware of the risk, of the increased risk. Yes. Yeah. And when people stand, and I do stand, I have done it, except once I was out on my bike, stand and clap at 8 o'clock on a Thursday, it actually brings tears to my eyes. Yeah. It does.
Well, Martin, next up, it's another great bit of creative content from a local resident.
Yes, it is. It's by Dylan, whose band is called Odd Todd, and he sent me a load of files, and I picked this one out because I particularly liked it, but all the others were good as well.
Okay, would you care to say the title?
No.
Guess it's up to me then. This is Odd Todd with Pad or Wad or Adam.
Pad or Wad or Adam.
That's the one.
That's not the only tune that Dylan sent me, as I mentioned. The next item is, I believe, Ange with her poem. What's it called? A poem?
This is Ange with Staying In, a poem about the times after the times before.
Yeah.
The now times.
The now times, yes. This staying in times. I noticed that her poem had the same rhythm structure as another one of Dylan's songs, so I combined the two, and it came out quite nicely, I think.
That was great creative input, Martin. I love that in you. Sounds to me like you've cheered up a bit.
I've cheered up a bit.
I'm pointing very aggressively.
Yeah, okay.
Because it conveys joy.
Yeah. If you could just cool it a bit. Well, I find you really irritating, but otherwise I have cheered up. It's got to be said, yes.
It's very infectious.
It's insufferable.
I love it. It's great. Let's go to that poem now.
Staying in appears to be the brand new going out. So what on Pitsmoor's good green earth is all of this about? I'm drinking more beer than I've had in a year, and I've started to play buckaroo. I've made a toy moth out of old felted cloth, and it's posted on Facebook for you. I've planted some seeds, I've removed many weeds. The sunflowers are just coming through. The bathroom is clean, but I've recently been thinking of learning the didgeridoo. My son's been around and it's breaking new ground to say it's 6 feet between me and you. Now the bay horse is shut and it's doing me nut. I've resorted to drinking home brew. I'm now 1 card short of a full deck and 1 penny off the whole shilling. Just 1 wave short of a shipwreck. I don't feel my usual top billing. The flour's running short and I've had to resort to baking 1 day out of 2. I've watched so much TV I could take a degree on the feats of that dog Scooby-Doo. On Thursdays at 8 we all stand at the gate, on a step, by a door, me and you. And with tears in our eyes, which we barely disguise, we say thanks with a hullabaloo. The music I've played and the artwork I've made were planned but have all fallen through. When this is all over, I'm going to Dover and I'm planning a brand new tattoo. I am knitting with only 1 needle. I'm unravelling fast, it's quite true. I'm in a tent at the top of the garden. But my friends, how are all of you?
Things ain't so bad, Martin, because they're great. I am overjoyed with enthusiasm and energy from not being able to go outside very much.
Yeah, I suppose I'll tell you on something, but your opportunity to score anything.
I ate a whole Easter egg before this recording!
This is the
Stuck At
Home Service.
And now a piece that I wasn't sure what to do with. I've tried putting it in various places in the programme and it never seems to quite fit because it really isn't following the sort of feel and silliness that this podcast seems to be all about. But I want to include it because I think it's really good. I think it's really beautifully put together. It's by the band 10 Million Aliens. John Rowley sent it to me, who was in a few weeks ago, and well, it speaks for itself, and I'll play it for you now. Okay, thank you.
When I was a child, I had a mug on it, which had the wonderful and famous lines, "Let the wealthy and great roll in splendour and state. I envy them not, I declare it. I eat my own lamb, my own chicken and ham. I share my own feast, and I carry it."
The eyes to the right, 309. The nose to the left, 323.
To thank the staff of the NHS, those who work in social care, all of you. You are the front line in this war against this virus, and we all pay tribute to you.
I had a little cry in there. I'm a critical care nurse. I've just finished 48 hours of work. I just wanted to get some stuff in for the next 48 hours. There's no fruit, there's no vegetables. I just don't know how I'm supposed to stay healthy. And those people, when people are just stripping the shelves of basic foods, you just need to stop it. Because there's people like me that are going to be looking after you when you're at your lowest, and just stop it. Please.
You do not survive the illness through fortitude and strength of character, whatever the Prime Minister's colleagues will tell us. And the disease is not a great leveller, the consequences of which everyone, rich or poor, suffers the same. This is a myth which needs debunking. Those who are on the front line right now, bus drivers and shelf stackers, nurses, care home workers, hospital staff and shopkeepers, are disproportionately the lower paid members.
I'm sure the nation will join me in assuring you that what you do is appreciated, and every hour of your hard work brings us closer to a return to more normal times.
A man's right to work as he will, to spend what he earns, to own property, to have the state as servant and not as master. They are the essence of a free economy, and on that freedom all our other freedoms depend.
One of the hardest things about dealing in graphs and numbers, statistics, targets, flattening or rising curves is the propensity to forget the names and lives behind the growing death toll. Tonight we want to remember some of those who died whilst doing their job. They were not soldiers, they didn't sign up to a career in which they pledged to give their lives. They would not see themselves as heroes, but as ordinary members of the public doing their work at a time when it demanded immense courage and kindness. Here are just some of those key workers from all walks of life we remember tonight.
So let us stand as we face the coming storm, for we love this land.